Today, Donald held a press conference, which on Monday he claimed was going to be one of the biggest, most amazing things that's ever happened in the history of the universe because he was announcing a trade deal with England. But the truth is, he's just desperately scrambling for a win in the middle of his disastrous trade war. This was supposed to be a victory lap for him, but the truth of the matter is he's just lying about how great this deal is because up until today he hasn't secured a single major trade agreement with anybody. So we could ask what the deal is, but the truth of the matter is also that nobody seems to know. Donald started out by saying that the fictional deal is set in fictional stone.
In the coming weeks, we'll have it all very conclusive, but the actual deal is a very conclusive one. And it's very conclusive, and it's a great deal, and it's a very big deal, but it's very conclusive. This is a very conclusive deal.
You would think that somebody's been working on his SAT words, but it's not just being able to say the word, it's knowing what the definition of it is that it gets you a good score in the SATs. Of course, he wouldn't know that because he paid somebody to take his. But how can something be conclusive now if we're going to wait a few weeks to see if it's conclusive? Unfortunately, the word coming out of his mouth has absolutely no meaning at all. And when asked about potential tariffs on British films, which you may or may not remember is something Donald said that he planned for all films around the globe, 100% tariffs on all films made outside of the United States. Here's what he said.
I'd say this is a great day for James Bond because now Aston Martins will be available to American buyers. Will it be even better by extending it to film? You've talked about a big tariff on films, and we'd like to know if there'll be relief on it.
Well, we're going to have a discussion on that separately. And as you know, we're putting tariffs on that particular film, you said, the movie makers. And we're going to be doing some tariffs to get them because a lot of them have left this country. They all live here, the money comes from here, everything comes from here, but they make them in other countries. So we're going to do something to bring them back.
Everything does not come from here, as if that has to be said. Also, saying, I don't know, we'll have to talk about in the future. That's kind of the opposite of something that's conclusive, which makes me wonder, has Donald been working on antonyms? But he doesn't understand what those are either. Anyway, it's pretty obvious that this was a hastily thrown together, I hesitate to call it a deal, outline of a concept of a plan, perhaps. And the only reason this announcement was made today is because Donald is panicking. Like he needs to convince people that he's actually doing something productive, which is very difficult to do when you're not doing anything productive. A reporter actually called him out directly.
Why Britain and why now? And you've described this deal as a full and comprehensive deal, and yet we've just heard from Mr. Mandel said it's the end of the beginning. Clearly, there's much more work still to do. Yeah. With respect, are you overstating the reach and significance of this deal because you're a president who needs a result at a difficult time?
I think that it's a great deal for both parties. It's for us. We're opened up. I didn't know how closed it was. Quite closed, the market, as you know, the UK. And it opens up a tremendous market for us, and it works out very well.
Does it really open up a tremendous market for us? But I just want to say, like, this is what happens, Donald, when you have a press conference in which reporters from other countries are allowed in because they actually do journalism, unlike the sycophants and ass-kissers that you'll allow into the Oval Office most of the time. Also, I just have to say, a little pride here. Leave it to a Scotsman to ask the tough question. So, obviously, Donald needs a win. Polls show that his approval rating on the economy has totally cratered. There's been a recent drop of 16 points, and that's after he was already underwater on the economy. Now, it's possible that this could actually be the worst trade deal ever made in history, but Donald would still spin it as a victory because that's what he does. He's so used to this. I think that's important to remember. Donald has never actually accomplished anything in his life, and yet he still believes that he's great, that he's better than everybody else. So everything has to be spun as a win. But it's pretty obvious to those of us who are objective and sane that he's flailing. As the presser dragged on, and boy, did it, it only got worse. Donald revealed once again, I mean, he does this on a daily basis, so we should be used to this by now, that he does not understand the most basic principles of business. Before we go on, though, please remember that we here at Mary Trump Media are not corporate media. We don't bend the knee to anybody. We are not for sale now, and we never will be. We expose the lies the Trump regime tells on a daily basis and wants to keep buried. Independent media survives because of you. So please like and share our videos and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Donald is a self-proclaimed business genius, and for decades he's been allowed to get away with that myth. But even so, he has a very basic understanding of business and no understanding at all about trade or the global economy. This exchange about ports and truck drivers is particularly revealing.
Because business has slowed down, as you mentioned, we're seeing as a result the ports here in the U.S., the traffic has really slowed, and now thousands of dock workers and truck drivers are worried about their jobs.
That means we lose less money. When I see that, that means we lose less money. Look, China was making over $1 trillion, 1.1 trillion, in my opinion. Different numbers from 500 billion to $1 trillion or $1 trillion. I think it was 1.1 trillion. And frankly, if we didn't do business, we would have been better off. Okay, you understand that. So when you say it slowed down, that's a good thing, not a bad thing. But
okay, so not doing business at all is better for business. Let's make this very, very simple. Because Donald, I like to help you out whenever possible. And I know you have a tough time with things like arithmetic and, well, everything. So if you buy a good from another country at wholesale prices, I'm not sure if you know what those are, but then you import it into this country and your business sells it at retail prices. Yes, you spent money originally to buy the goods from the other country, but then you're marking it up. That means making it more expensive and selling it to American consumers. That's how you make your money. Yes, you do have to spend money on the initially, but you would think that a business genius would understand the basic concept. You got to spend money to make money. You know why he doesn't understand that concept, though? Because he's never had to spend money. He's always spending other people's money. So he does not understand either how trade involves American workers, not just the companies who import goods at wholesale and then mark them up and sell them at retail, which is how they make their money. There are also truckers, dock workers, warehouse staff, and all of the supporting businesses around ports. I mean, we're talking about things like restaurants and lunch trucks and stuff like that, right? There's a whole ecosystem of people involved in this. But he doesn't know that. And even if he did, he wouldn't care. He wouldn't care that if trade slows down, like let's say his insane premise were correct, which it's not, there are still jobs at risk here. We don't need imports is economic suicide, and it's utterly nonsensical because without imports, we don't have the goods because America no longer has the manufacturing infrastructure it had 40 years ago. Another question came up about whether companies like Mattel or Ford would raise prices in response to tariffs.
With companies like Ford and Mattel recently saying they're going to raise prices on certain products, how long do you think the American public is going to be patient and wait?
Well, I think they're saying that just to try and negotiate deals with me. They're not.
Okay, because that makes perfect sense. They're just trying to negotiate deals with you. You're not an individual private business person anymore. You don't have deals to make. You sadly, tragically, horrifically are the leader of the United States of America. And Ford is not making deals with you. Ford and Mattel are grappling with the horrors of the tariffs you've imposed on goods coming from countries from which they need to import them, which means that companies, both small and large, have choices to make. Do we make goods so expensive that potentially customers can't afford them anymore? Like dolls for Christmas, for example? Or do we make goods cheaper and lose money and potentially have to lay off thousands of workers? That is the calculus companies like Mattel and Ford and small businesses all over the country are facing because of Donald's utter ineptitude, narcissism, selfishness, stupidity, and cruelty. Tariffs raise costs for companies, for small businesses, for American consumers ultimately. Businesses are not going to are not going to swallow those price increases. And again, if they do, people are going to get laid off and the businesses are going to suffer in other ways. And some of them will undoubtedly go out of business. Donald was not done talking about Mattel, however. He is having a much harder time being oriented to time and place lately. And I think this press conference was a very good example of that. When asked about the toy maker again, which is going to have to raise its prices just in time for Christmas, that holiday that Democrats keep waging war upon, Donald referred to Mattel as a country.
Mattel, I don't know, I'm not so sure. They also said, they're the only country I've heard, they said, well, we're going to go counter. We're going to try going someplace else. That's okay. Let him go, and we'll put 100% tariff on his toys, and he won't sell one toy in the United States, and that's their biggest market. I heard that. I mean, I watched this guy talking about how I'm going to go counter. I said, well, I wouldn't want to have him as an executive too long.
Okay, so Mattel is a country, or Mattel is some guy. Which is it? Well, it's neither. Mattel is a corporation and its products are toys, children's toys. And just for context, something like 80% of children's toys sold in this country are, yes, manufactured in China. In a completely unrelated answer about air traffic control, Donald started rambling about pilots like a man who had completely forgotten why he was where he was, or even where he was.
The helicopter that crashed into the plane at 400 feet, it shouldn't have been. What would have happened is all sorts of bells and sirens would have been going off 3 minutes before that accident happened, if you had the right equipment, but they didn't. And the new equipment is unbelievable what it does. You don't even, I was going to say something, but you always, in my opinion, you always need pilots. I want pilots. But you wouldn't even have to have pilots. This system is so incredible what they can do.
I'm actually quite glad my father's not around to listen to this disgusting human being talk about pilots. Okay. To use that accident that happened in DC, the very beginning of the Trump regime, and to hear him say that, the problem was that they didn't have the right equipment is obscene. When the truth of the matter is, all of the problems we've been having with American air travel since Donald got back into office is because he and Elon Musk have been cutting funding to the Federal Aviation Association, making air travel more and more dangerous every day for anybody who gets on a plane in America, including the pilots and the flight attendants and any of us who just wants to get from point A to point B in what used to be the safest way to travel in the United States of America. So he just can't hold it together for more than a minute or two or a question or two at a time. He was then asked about his pick for Surgeon General, And because apparently he's not in charge of anything and is responsible for nothing, and nobody tells him anything, he didn't know who it was.
You just announced a new nominee for the U.S. Surgeon General who never finished her residency and is not a practicing physician. So can you explain why you picked her to be America's top doctor?
Because Bobby thought she was fantastic. She's she's a brilliant woman who went through Stanford, and as I understand it, she basically wanted to be an academic as opposed to a surgeon. I think she graduated first in her class at Stanford. And Bobby really thought she was great. I don't know her. I listened to the recommendation of Bobby. I met her yesterday and once before. She's a very outstanding person, a great academic, actually. So I think she'll be great.
She didn't finish her residency. She's a great academic. By the way, I didn't realize only surgeons needed to become actual medical doctors in order to practice. Anyway, it is alarming, to say the least, that the person responsible for hiring people to fill positions like the Surgeon General has little or no interest into knowing anything about that person. It's pretty clear that Donald doesn't know what he's talking about. He doesn't know who she is. He just took some really basic talking points from Robert Kennedy, of all people, who himself has zero qualifications, because I like to remind all of you from time to time that Robert Kennedy used to be an environmental attorney. He has no degrees of any kind, advanced or otherwise, in any sciences whatsoever. What should be abundantly obvious to us by now, if it hasn't been beforehand, is that Donald is not in charge of his regime. He's there to rubber stamp other people's egregious choices. He just nods along while other people make decisions for him, and he can't even be bothered to keep up. And his insults are also becoming less tenable, more obviously based on lies, and quite frankly, a lot of them are defamatory. He tried to go after Pete Buttigieg, for God's sakes. Remember, the transportation secretary under President Biden? And this is what happened.
Before we had the rigged election, to give out a brand new gorgeous system to one company that was going to do the whole thing, one of the best companies in the world that you know very well. You know, there are 3 or 4 of them that do it. And when they took over, Buttigieg, who has no clue, you know, he drives to work on his bicycle with his, in all fairness, with his husband on the back, which is a nice, loving relationship. But he didn't have a clue. This guy didn't have a clue.
I'm pretty sure that Pete Buttigieg was a quite excellent Secretary of Transportation. And I'm not entirely sure how making some kind of weird homophobic comment, like in what context was it necessary? First of all, the bicycle thing is I cannot comment because I don't. Is it gay to ride bicycles? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe I need to do a little research into that. I mean, I like riding bicycles, but I'm pretty sure I'm not the only person on the planet who does. But the whole comment about having Pete Buttigieg's, and it's Buttigieg, by the way, husband on the back of the bicycle, and that clearly sarcastic comment about it's being a loving relationship, it just shows you what happens when Donald has no grasp of the facts. He is going to go for the least common denominator. He's always going to go for the ad hominem attack. The hits just kept on coming during this unhinged. We're going to need a new word because they're all unhinged. Press briefing. He turned his sights on Chuck Schumer, which I don't particularly have any problem with, quite honestly. But the insult he used against Schumer was just bizarre.
But they have Trump derangement syndrome. You know, Senator Schumer's become a Palestinian. Welcome. I don't know when they're going to give him the ceremony, whatever the ceremony may be.
Okay, that is the Oval Office. That's in the White House. That's in the People's House. And that moronic laughter in the background? I mean, I can't be sure because I couldn't see him, but I'm pretty sure that was Howard Lutnick, who was one of the worst of Donald's sycophants and enablers. How is it funny? How is it relevant? How is it I don't even know. How is it an insult that Chuck Schumer is a Palestinian and that there's going to be a ceremony to make him one? None of that means anything. And by the way, I mean, I'm pretty sure that what Donald is trying to do there is, malign Palestinians, obviously, and undermine Schumer's own Jewish faith. So it's both anti-Palestinian and anti-Semitic. Well done, Donald. That's a twofer. Then he went after Jerome Powell, not surprisingly, because Jerome Powell is a serious person who understands that his job is to save the economy from Donald Trump. And he's continuing to refuse to slash interest rates because this would be terrible for an already terrible economy. Check this out.
Other countries have done it's like jet fuel. It'd be great, but he doesn't want to do it. I think he doesn't want to do it. Probably he's not in love with me. I think that's right. It's sort of a crazy reason, but that's the way life is.
Wow. Is anybody? No, nobody's ever loved you in your pathetic, miserable life, which is sad. That is legitimately sad, but now you deserve it. So no, Jerome Powell is not making any of his decisions based on his personal feelings for you one way or the other. He's making his decisions based on the fact that you continue to make decisions based on your ignorance and stupidity that are putting this country's economy at increasingly great risk, increasing our risks of recession, and quite honestly, increasing the risks that the entire global economy is going to go under. So, hey, you know what, Donald, if you need to keep lying to yourself about why people are doing what they're doing in order to protect us from you, go for it. But hopefully there will still be people out there trying to protect us from you. Please take a second and like and share this video. It'd be awesome if you could subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to us in podcast form, please follow us and give the show a 5-star rating because it really does help other people find our content. Thanks.